Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Aaron Moss. I'm a senior research scientist at CloudResearch and an instructor of psychology at Siena College. I'm joined today by Leib Litman, who's the chief research officer at CloudResearch and a professor of psychology at Touro University. As you can see from the title of today's webinar, and I'm sure when you signed up, today we want to tell you how to make research methods your students' favorite class. And we want to do that by introducing a textbook that's titled Research in the Cloud, An Introduction to Modern Methods in Behavioral Science. So this is a textbook that we've worked on for the last year or more. And two of the most important things that you need to know right up front are that this book is published through Cambridge University Press, and it's a completely free open access textbook. So today I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, telling you what's in this book, how you can teach with it, and then guiding you through some of the resources we've created for teachers who want to adopt the text. Then we have about 20 minutes set aside for a question and answer session. And during that time, Leib and I will be happy to answer questions you have about the technology we use, how students have responded in the courses that we've taught, and anything else you want to know about how to use this material in your classes. Finally, after everything wraps up today, we plan to share a preview of the first part of the book and access to our Open Science Framework page, where we've stored all the project materials for the assignments and studies within the book. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. So I said at the outset that we want to help you make research methods your students' favorite class. And if you have any experience teaching research methods, you know that's a tall order. Even though I'm sure many of you would agree that research methods is often one of the most important courses in the undergraduate curriculum, for students, the course is often intimidating, or in the worst cases, boring. And that's because the material often feels abstract, dry, and disconnected from the real world. Students are asked to learn many abstract concepts in a research methods course. And a second and related challenge is that there are often very few opportunities for students to practice or apply what they learn. Many research activities are the kinds of tasks that people learn best with repeated practice over an extended period of time. This is why master's and PhD programs where people are trained in research often stretch several years, and they operate under something like an apprenticeship model. Within a single semester, it's often hard to conduct research with human subjects. So how can we make the course more active and more connected to practical outcomes that students care about? Our goal with this book is to transform research methods from a course where you tell students about research to one where you enable them to actually do research. And that begins on the very first day of class. Now you might ask, well, Aaron, how do you do that? Didn't you just say research is hard to conduct during the semester? And the answer is that while that diagnosis of research is generally true, or it was true in the past, it's a lot less true today. Today, there are all kinds of tools that teachers and students can use to conduct real research in the classroom. And at CloudResearch, we excel at creating tools for finding participants online or programming surveys, and we have a lot of experience teaching people how to use those tools. So for us, one of the major catalysts in writing this book was the realization that what used to take an entire semester, planning a study, creating measures, collecting data, and then analyzing it, can now be accomplished in a single class session. And because research tools are so much more accessible than they were in the past, the best way to teach students research methods is to have them actively involved doing research throughout the entire semester. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about part one of the textbook that we've created. It's actually divided into two parts. And part one, you can see part of the table of contents here, is really a complete guide through the foundational principles of behavioral research. We start off introducing students to the science of studying people, what it means to scientifically study human behavior. The book then introduces tools that behavioral scientists use, not just in academia, but what researchers in government agencies, market research, or in other industry, what kinds of tools people use. And then it goes through topics that you might expect to see, like descriptive research, measurement, correlational research, causal inference, experimental designs, and it finishes with using artificial intelligence tools to conduct qualitative or more mixed methods research. At a later date, we'll have a webinar for part 2, where we have a guide for conducting online research. So part 2 is really intended more for students in maybe a Research Methods 2 class, a capstone project course, or even students in a graduate program who are learning to conduct online research. We cover the book covers things like where to find participants online. There are several chapters on data quality, best practices for setting up and collecting data, and it includes chapters on ethics and writing. In the chat, I think I just heard a second ago, we posted a detailed table of contents that you can take a look at to really see the progression of information through part 1 of this book. I think it also includes information from the preface and the introduction. All right, so the first part of the book is structured around what we call CLABs, which are classroom laboratory hybrids. And the goal of these CLABs is to remove the traditional wall that exists between lecture and lab. So in a CLAB session, you introduce a theoretical concept. And then in that very same class, students immediately begin to apply that idea with some kind of hands-on project. These projects have been designed to be short enough and simple enough to fit within the class period. These CLABs are a great way to teach because not only do they make class engaging and active, but they facilitate discussion. They allow students to ask questions for clarification as they're working on a problem. And they allow teachers to evaluate whether students actually understand the concepts. In short, they align with a lot of the best pedagogical practices that research says support student learning. To make these CLABs work, each chapter follows a carefully scaffolded 4-step learning progression. First, you introduce a concept like measurement or correlation. Second, students either read about example applications or immediately work on work with a real data set to see that concept in action. After introducing the concept and seeing a few examples, the book takes students through a guided project where they work with pre-built materials and real data sets. And then finally, after walking through a guided project, the book empowers students to design and conduct their own original research. This process builds student skills incrementally, and it makes each of the concepts they're learning about more tangible. So let's walk through a few examples of the activities and projects within the book. One example the book uses to illustrate different research designs across multiple guided projects is the classic Heinz dilemma. If you remember this from the work of Lawrence Kohlberg and developmental psychology, people are presented with a moral dilemma in which a man named Heinz is trying to obtain a drug for his wife who is sick and dying. Heinz can't afford the drug, so he breaks into a pharmacy and steals it. People are then asked whether the behavior is morally acceptable and whether Heinz should have stolen the drug. The first time students encounter this dilemma is in the context of descriptive research. The chapter explains what descriptive research is, gives some engaging examples, and then walks students through the guided project. In our experience, this is a great class. Right away, students are talking about the dilemma and explaining why they think Heinz should or should not steal the drug. Then we have them program the survey, and they learn how they can gather data from participants. Instead of collecting that data, though, the chapter gives them a data set with responses from 100 people matched to the US Census. Students then learn how to analyze that data to see what people think, and they learn to create a figure that looks something like this. So as you can see, this gets students active. It allows them to apply what they're learning. It allows a teacher to talk about all kinds of related concepts like statistics and distributions and how you describe what people think. But here's where things get really fun. After students work through the guided project, the book asks them to come up with their own idea for a descriptive project. They've already been thinking about the Heinz dilemma, so the book asks them to modify that scenario in some way, and it tells them that they're in a competition with other students in class. After everyone thinks of a descriptive question, the class votes on the best idea, gathers data from 100 more people online, and then you can analyze the data together. So the credit for this great activity actually goes to my wife, Stephanie Simon, who came up with this while working with her students. Everyone in the class proposed an idea while they were engaged in conversation. The class voted on the best idea. They launched a study online, gathered data from 100 people in about 10 minutes, and then everyone worked on the same data set together. And if you're curious about what the winning idea in her class was, her students wanted to see how morally acceptable it was for Heinz to steal the drug if he was trying to save his dog instead of trying to save his wife. So this is a great example of fun and interesting ideas that we want students to come up with, because this gets them thinking like behavioral scientists. They start asking questions like, what if we change this detail? Or what if Heinz did this instead of that? Over and over throughout the semester, the book uses guided projects as a springboard for students' own ideas, which are often fun, insightful, and interesting, and they keep the students much more involved in the course than they might otherwise be. So let me give you another example. When the book introduces correlational research, students learn what an association between two variables is, and then they learn those associations can be positive or negative. After learning that basic information, they download a data set that has multiple clinical measures, including things like anxiety, depression, sleep disturbance, experiences with trauma, and they calculate a bivariate correlation between two variables. Then things get progressively more complicated. The book teaches students about correlation matrices and how to read those matrices and examine the correlation between multiple different variables and how to tell if they're statistically significant. Once students have the basic knowledge of correlation, they return to the Heinz dilemma for a guided project. The book asks them to think about the variability from the descriptive project when people disagreed about the right course of behavior. It asks them to think about what might predict differences in people's moral judgments. The book then introduces students to moral foundations theory and asks them to form hypotheses about how moral foundations might relate to people's judgments in the Heinz dilemma. They're then given a new pre-built Qualtrics file so they can see how a study like this is set up, and a new data set where they can test the correlation between people's moral foundations and their judgments of Heinz. So while many of the activities and examples in the book teach traditional concepts, sometimes the book introduces a modern twist. For example, in the chapter about measurement, students are first asked to find existing measures on a topic that they're interested in. Then the book prompts them to think, what would you do if you wanted to measure a related concept, but no validated measure exists? The answer, of course, is that researchers often create a new measure, and the book then asks students to engage in a process using AI to create their own questionnaire instrument. So they're aiming for a 7 to 10 item measurement scale. Creating these scales is a process. The book first shows students how to prompt the AI to get a good batch of initial questions, and then how to refine that list of questions. This empowers students to conduct truly original research because they can use these scales not only to gather data about reliability and validity, but later in the semester when they conduct correlational or experimental research. So to give you a couple of examples of the scales that students have created in this class, here's a measure a student came up with to measure people's perceptions of how fast or slowly time passes, what they call a temporal perception scale. Later in the semester, the student used this scale to look at the correlation between people's well-being and how fast or slow they perceive time as passing. Here's one more example where a student was interested in people's emotional responses to music. You can see they came up with a list of about 10 items here. And then later in the semester, the student was interested in looking at how a measure of empathy correlates with people's emotional responses to music. So by letting students pursue things that they're interested in, they can build a series of studies over the course of the semester that pursues a question that they're interested in. And throughout the entire course, students are also building a cumulative portfolio of their work. Anytime they complete an activity or a study, the book asks them to add their hypotheses, their output, different figures they might create, and their thoughts and interpretations to a research portfolio. This creates a simple way for teachers to assess students' progress throughout the semester, and it gives students a tangible record of the skills that they're developing and the knowledge that they're gaining throughout the course. So at this point, we'll transition from talking about some of the projects and things that are in the book to some of the resources we've created. So first, of course, there's the book, which, as I mentioned, is a free and open access textbook. Within the book, there are a number of activities and guided projects. We have 8 different data sets with data from over 2,500 participants. And these studies span a range of topics within psychology and behavioral research. So as I mentioned, we have the Heinz dilemma, which we use to illustrate descriptive, correlational, and then 3 different experimental research designs. We have a data set on the Big Five and personality. We have the data set I mentioned on clinical outcomes. And that includes one data set where we measured anxiety and depression and some other variables with the same group of participants over the course of an entire year. So when we talk about causal inference and longitudinal research, students get to work with that data set. We have a correlational study that includes the moral foundations theory. And there's a project where students can look at differences between single versus married people in things like personality and happiness. So these projects span a range of different topics. And then there are a number of teacher resources, things like the portfolio structure that are already within the book, and things like an example syllabus and other resources that we are creating. For each of the guided projects, we have project files that we've created. These include things like Qualtrics survey files that students can upload directly into Qualtrics if they're using that. We have SPSS-ready data sets, as well as a CSV that students can upload into any other stats package that they're using. We store all of these different project materials on the Open Science Framework. So not only does this expose students to the Open Science Framework, which a lot of people are using to make their work more transparent and accessible. You can see a quick look at that here. This is our Research in the Cloud project page on the Open Science Framework. If you're familiar with the new structure, if you click on Files, there are then folders that have all kinds of materials. These often include a Word document with the measurements and materials, a QSF that you can upload directly into Qualtrics, and then some of the data files that I've mentioned. So in addition to the guided projects and the files that are available on the Open Science Framework, we've created an entire video series that guides students through each activity. I'm actually going to show you a brief clip, about 40 seconds or so, from one of these videos. In many cases, we've designed them to be short, about 5 to 7 minutes, and to be engaging and a nice supplement to what students are learning. So this video comes from Chapter 2, where we're introducing students to all the tools that are used to conduct modern behavioral research. As one of the activities to help students understand the kinds of behavioral science studies that are conducted online today, we ask them to sign up as participants so that they can see the different range of projects that are online. And so this video is guiding them through how to sign up for a participant account so they can complete a couple projects. I'll just let it play for about 30 seconds or so you can get a look and an idea of the look and feel.
Hello, and welcome to the Research in the Cloud video series. In this first video, we're going to show you how behavioral scientists recruit participants for their studies in the digital age. By the end of this video, you'll not only know how participant recruitment platforms like Connect by CloudResearch operate, but you'll also have an inside look at what it's like to be a participant yourself. Here's an overview of what we'll be doing. First, we'll walk you through how to create a participant account on Connect. This is where your journey begins. Next, we'll explore the kinds of studies available, everything from consumer surveys and experimental research to mock jury trials, interviews with artificial intelligence, and fun personality tests.
All right, so just kind of a quick preview there of the look and feel. You can see we have high quality narration, nice animations, and these videos are extremely helpful when students get into programming surveys in Qualtrics or analyzing data. All right, so just a little bit of a summary before we get to the question and answer session. The textbook that we've written is an open access text that's meant for teaching research methods. There are a number of activities and projects in here that are intended to make the class active. And the projects and activities that we've created are designed to engage students. And we've already taught multiple classes using these activities. So we know that many of these things work well. And in addition to what we've created, we're also really excited to put this content into the hands of teachers to see what they come up with. We've been working on this for a long time now, and we know there are all kinds of ways to engage students in research. And we're certain that teachers are going to come up with all kinds of great assignments and activities that go beyond what is in the book. So if this style of teaching sounds exciting to you, if you think this is something that you want to incorporate even a little bit of into your class, we want to help you do that. And you might find that research methods isn't just your student's favorite class, but your favorite class to teach as well. And if that happens, nothing would make us happier. So with that, we'll move it into the question and answer session. Before we do that, I just want to make one more comment about the status of the book. So we've submitted this to the publisher, and they're working through the production process. We were hoping that an online version would be ready for the fall semester. And even if the publisher doesn't make it through the production process by then, we have a professional, high quality looking PDF that we've created and we can make available for people to use in a pre-production format. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but the book is going to be primarily an online or ebook first, although there will be print copies that people can order if they're interested. And we think this book can be used as either as a main text or as a lab manual. So one of the first questions I see here is from Lisa, and she asks, I've not distributed a survey without paying participants. Is there a population that participates without being paid? Leib, do you want to jump in and explain what you've done with some of the students in your courses?
Yeah, sure. So there are a couple of options. And the options span from using more traditional approaches, like using the participant pool at your university. You can sometimes ask students to give out a survey to their friends, right? That could work. There are other ways. So if a class has some funding from the department, there are of course options available for collecting data on CloudResearch, right? So you could collect data that way. We also have some grants that we make available for that. You can apply, we call it a Spark Fund, where we try to make like $100 or $200 available for a class to be able to run like 1 or 2 studies or 3 studies throughout a semester. Typically, what I found is that classes, that have some funding available from the department, can do all the studies that they need to for like $300-400, and so that's another way to do it.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that too. So there's multiple options. One thing that I know Stephanie did when teaching with her students, she had some students who came up with projects that they wanted to conduct offline. And of course, it's much slower, it runs into all those problems, but it was actually a bit of a learning experience. All the students got to run a few sessions offline and then see how much easier it is to use some of the online tools to reach different groups of participants. So there's a lot of different ways you can facilitate some of these projects, including, as we talk about in the book, students can send a link to a couple friends and family members if it's a small demonstration sort of thing. But the online, obviously, is always going to be the fastest for a lot of these projects.
Yeah, and I guess just to give a scale of that, so the example that Aaron gave of the Heinz dilemma, where students get to vote on like what the best idea is. I mean, I've tried it in my own class, and it really is quite fun and engaging. Students really have a lot of fun with it. and then they select one project. So then we take that one project and we collect data through Connect. And the project like that for like 100 people, because the study is relatively short, could be done for about $50. So that kind of whole class project, can be done at that kind of a scale.
How can people get a PDF of the book? So right now, going back to the book is going through the production process. We have a pre-publication version that we'll make available and a preview that we plan to send out after the webinar wraps up. But if you're interested, if you take a look at that and you want to use the book this fall, we have the pre-publication version that we'll make available if the publisher doesn't get a copy up online by then. So Stephanie Gooding asks, I am going to be teaching research methods and stats at a community college for the first time. Would this be an appropriate text to use for that particular demographic? Do you want to take that one, Leib, or would you like me to?
Was it research methods and stats?
Research methods and stats, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. This is exactly what the book is for. I personally teach research methods. I've been teaching research methods every semester for about 30 years, just shy of 30 years. And I've been using this particular book at an introductory level, so intro to experimental psychology. And it's really perfect for that. It's also a really great book to use for stats because it actually combines stats and experimental, right? So every time you collect a little bit of data, or every time you download a data set and you look at it, it demonstrates all the main ideas and main topics that are covered in the statistics course. Everything from descriptive statistics, distributions, correlations, all those things are covered in an engaging, project-oriented way. So you can really use, I think, for both courses. I think for stats, you would use it as more of a supplementary course. If you're teaching stats, this can be like the lab portion of a stats class, and for experimental, it could be both the main text and the lab manual.
Yeah, and just I agree with all that. Just to add one thing is I think any group population of students who are learning about research methods, this book is appropriate for. So when we go to conferences and we're in different places, we run into lots of high school students and high school teachers. I think this is ideal for them, for students who are in a summer research program. And part of the reason why is that it's a very nice introduction that scaffolds people's learning. So just to give you an idea, on the first day, we mentioned that first class is active. We have students go and do something online that's very easy. They take a 10-item personality measure, and then they take those scores that they get and they put them into a open Google Sheet data file that we have, and we use those experiences to start talking about what does it mean to measure a variable? What do scientists do once they have this data? And so for anyone who's new to this, to behavioral research, it starts off very basic level and then scaffolds their learning through more complex ideas.
Okay, I see a question here from Marie Louise. I still don't understand how data are gathered immediately during class. They'll just do each other's questions. So the way to collect data during class is to collect the data through CloudResearch Connect. So for example, that project that Aaron talked about with the Heinz dilemma, it takes about 5 minutes. It's a 3 to 5 minute survey. So if the survey is launched in class, within 20 minutes, 100 people will take it. And after 20 minutes, you can download the data set, open it up in SPSS and start analyzing it. It really is very fast, the way that the data comes in. And so that's one way to facilitate real in-class live types of data collection and analysis.
All right, so there's another question that says, how do we access the textbook? I'm still not clear on that. Is there a link? So after things wrap up today, we'll send out an email that contains a preview, And then as we move towards the fall, again, if the publisher gets through the production process, they'll make the book available online, and there will be like a link or a website that you can go to. If that production process isn't complete by the fall, then we'll make a PDF available through CloudResearch. We'll email that out to people. We'll post it online, and people can use that pre-production version of the book if they're interested. So it looks like there's another question that asks, are you planning a graduate level version? So that I mentioned earlier that there's two parts to the book. Part one of the book is this basic information that is probably most relevant to undergraduates. And then part two, which we'll have another webinar about, is an entire guide to conducting research online, which is how most students are conducting research nowadays. So it's not a graduate level research methods thing, like more advanced topics, but it's teaching graduate students how to conduct research online. And it goes through lots of very detailed topics. So it starts off with where do you find participants online, goes through all kinds of problems that come up with data quality and how to measure and protect data quality. So those are all more advanced lessons that are appropriate for graduate students and anyone looking to really have a guide to doing online research well.
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah, part two could actually be a really great graduate level book and beyond. So it's really great for any level. Professors can read it. There's a lot of really amazing information there about online research that some of it is introductory, some of it is intermediate, some of it is very advanced, some of it is not found in any other books. So it's just a great all-around resource for online data collection. There's another question here for what sort of, again, from Marie Louise. Thank you so much for asking these questions. What sort of statistical software do you focus on for analyzing data? I saw that you have both SPSS data and CSV, but in your explanations on how to analyze data, do you focus on a particular program? So we made some decisions when creating this book. We had to choose one example software, both for creating studies and for analyzing data. And what we went with were software that are most commonly used currently. So for creating surveys, we use Qualtrics as examples throughout the entire book, because we know that that is something that most people have access to through their university. And at the same time, there are other alternatives that we mentioned that are available for free. So in case you don't have access to Qualtrics for whatever reason, there is a survey creator that we have available that is pretty much just as good and that is completely free, doesn't require subscription. With regard to SPSS, again, we chose SPSS to use throughout all of the examples in the book. And there is a lot of like how-to guides in the textbook, and it's all specific to SPSS. At the same time, we realize that not everybody uses SPSS, not everybody favors SPSS. And so we will be creating a kind of a book website where there will be essentially parallel materials that guide that provide a guide for all the examples throughout the book, but that use alternative data analysis software. So as of now, everything in the book is in SPSS, but before the semester starts, there'll be other software guides as well.
So one more question.
Stephanie Gooding. Yeah. I recently used Cloud Connect for my thesis and collected 600 participants in a matter of hours, really fast. Yeah, thank you. I think that is exactly the kind of thing that really makes all this possible. You can literally, for student projects, you never need 600 people. All you usually need is 100, and that can be collected literally within a matter of 10 to 20 minutes. So it's really really fast and facilitates real classroom learning and conversation.
Yeah, I saw multiple people asked about a link to the Open Science Framework project page. So we have an email that we'll send out after this, again, with a preview of the first part of the book. And we'll also send out the link to the Open Science page. But if you go to OSF right now and you search Research in the Cloud, you'll find it. And there's some other resources that we'll be creating and sharing as well.
And because the book is going to be made available in electronic format, there are actually links that you can click in the actual PDF and in the final version of the book that will take you directly to the OSF page. But for now, yeah, as Aaron said, you can just search for the book, and it'll come up. Will there be any guides to JASP? Yeah, that's one of the programs that we'll be including. Yeah. If any of you want to ask any other questions, please feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to discuss any other questions that you may have going forward, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Enjoy your summer.